The story of Burkina Faso under the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré has become one of the most captivating political narratives of our time. In a country long defined by instability, underdevelopment, and the weight of outside influence, the young leader has attempted to rewrite the course of history through bold, unconventional decisions. Among the most striking of these is the transformation of what once stood as a simple sports stadium into a thriving economic hub capable of generating over 20,000 jobs. This decision has sparked admiration at home, surprise abroad, and even skepticism from detractors who see it as too ambitious for a country that has struggled with basic infrastructure for decades. Yet, as the story unfolds, what Traoré achieved with this project is not just a testament to imagination, but to a broader philosophy of how African nations might rethink development in ways that challenge Western frameworks and unleash the latent potential within their borders. When the idea was first introduced, it seemed almost too symbolic, even poetic, to be true. A stadium is typically a monument of pride, built to host football tournaments, concerts, or political rallies. In most countries across Africa, stadiums are expensive projects, often funded by foreign partners, sometimes built with debts attached, and largely dormant when no major events are taking place. They sit as giant concrete shells, impressive from afar, but underutilized in terms of generating real economic activity. Traoré understood this reality and saw in it an opportunity. Why should a massive structure in the heart of a city remain idle for most of the year when it could become the nucleus of an entire new economy? This was the question that drove him to repurpose the stadium, but the answer lay not just in vision, but in practical planning and mobilization. The conversion began with small steps. Rather than demolishing or abandoning the stadium, his government drew up blueprints that reimagined every corner of the space. The playing field became a hub for agricultural exhibitions, a showcase for local produce, seeds, and technologies. The outer ring of the stadium was transformed into commercial stalls, providing affordable space for vendors and small entrepreneurs to sell everything from clothing to electronics, food, and crafts. The stands, instead of being empty for months on end, were converted into multi-use co-working spaces, classrooms, and training centers where young people could learn technical skills, digital literacy, and trades relevant to Burkina Faso's emerging industries. Soon, the once quiet arena turned into a bustling economic micro-city, alive with trade, innovation, and employment. The scale of the transformation surprised many. Within months of its launch, over 10,000 small-scale traders had registered for space in the stadium marketplace. Local farmers gained a permanent venue to bring their goods directly to consumers, bypassing middlemen who often captured most of the profits. Artisan cooperatives established workshops and displays inside the facility, turning the space into a cultural hub as well as an economic one. Meanwhile, the vocational training programs drew in thousands of young Burkinabe who were previously unemployed or working informally with no pathway to advancement. By the time the project reached its second year, it was estimated that more than 20,000 jobs had been created directly and indirectly, from vendors and trainers to logistics, workers, suppliers, and artisans. This transformation carried symbolic weight as well. By turning a space designed for spectacle into one that produces livelihood, Traoré made a statement about the priorities of his administration. While sports remain important for national pride, the stadium-turned-market was proof that infrastructure must serve people's everyday needs, not just occasional events. In a country where unemployment among youth often leads to disillusionment or migration, the initiative instilled a sense of hope that economic empowerment could come from within without waiting for foreign aid or international institutions to dictate the agenda. It showed Burkinabe citizens that the structures they already had could be reimagined to create value. Observers from across Africa began to take note. Delegations from neighboring countries visited the site to study how a simple pivot in thinking could turn a dormant building into an engine of prosperity. Leaders in Mali and Niger, who share similar socio-economic challenges, expressed interest in replicating the model. Even nations far beyond the Sahel followed the story with curiosity, with some experts calling it a pioneering example of African urban innovation. What particularly struck many was that the project required no billion-dollar loans, no massive foreign contracts, and no Western donor conditions. It was financed largely through national mobilization, small contributions, and reinvestment from revenues generated by the marketplace itself. Of course, the initiative was not without its challenges. Critics argued that converting a stadium into a marketplace risked undermining the potential of sports development. Others claimed the government was romanticizing the impact, inflating the numbers to create a narrative of success. Security analysts pointed out that such a concentrated economic hub could become a target for insurgent groups that remain active in parts of the country. Yet, despite these concerns, the evidence on the ground was undeniable. Thousands of people, who once had no formal income, were now engaged in work, training, or small businesses tied directly to the project. It became increasingly difficult for detractors to dismiss the results, and over time, the criticism began to fade against the backdrop of real impact. The larger implication of this initiative lies in how it reframes the concept of development. For decades, African nations have been told that progress requires large-scale projects financed by foreign powers, dams, highways, airports, or power plants, often carrying heavy debt burdens. While these investments are important, they often fail to directly touch the lives of ordinary citizens in the short term. Traoré's stadium project flipped this logic by showing that immediate, people-centered development could begin with existing structures, creativity, and a focus on jobs rather than monuments. It suggested that development does not always have to wait for billions in foreign loans or complex international negotiations. It can start locally with what is already available. Furthermore, the project tied into Traoré's broader philosophy of sovereignty and self-reliance. In speech after speech, he has emphasized that Burkina Faso must escape the cycle of dependency that has long chained it to outside powers. The stadium transformation became a physical embodiment of that philosophy, a way of showing that locals' initiative can achieve results where decades of foreign aid have often failed. By empowering people directly, the government under Traoré tapped into an energy of self-belief that is difficult to measure but visible in the optimism expressed by vendors, workers, and young trainees. The regional and global reactions to the project revealed the ripple effects it created. Western media often reported on it with a tone of curiosity, mixed with condescension, framing it as an unusual but limited initiative. However, within Africa, the narrative was strikingly different. Social media platforms buzzed with praise, with commentators calling Traoré's approach an example of true leadership rooted in practical solutions. Youth movements across the continent cited the project as proof that young leaders could think differently and challenge the status quo. It became not just a Burkina story, but a continental one, resonating with millions who feel trapped by unemployment and lack of opportunity. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the stadium project was how it bridged tradition and modernity. Alongside the digital training centers and tech-oriented initiatives, there were also stalls celebrating traditional crafts, local music, and indigenous food. The blending of modern job creation with cultural pride gave the space a unique identity, making it more than just an economic center, but also a living museum of Burkinabe resilience. International visitors described it as a miniature city within a city, where one could witness the full spectrum of society interacting in productive and meaningful ways. As the years progressed, the economic impact began to extend far beyond the stadium itself. Surrounding neighborhoods saw growth in real estate, transportation, and services. New restaurants opened, hotels expanded, and entrepreneurs set up logistics companies to supply goods to the thousands of traders working daily in the complex. The project stimulated a local economy that spread like ripples across the city. Reports indicated that for every job created directly inside the stadium, at least 2 more were created in the surrounding ecosystem. In this sense, the 20,000 jobs were not just a number, but the anchor of a much broader transformation. For Ibrahim Traoré, the project became a signature achievement, one that defined his image as a leader who does not just speak about sovereignty and transformation, but delivers concrete results. It gave him credibility in the eyes of his people, especially the youth who had placed so much hope in his leadership. Beyond the symbolism, it created a tangible foundation for future initiatives showing that Burkina Faso could innovate and lead in unexpected ways. When reflecting on this project, one must also consider the wider historical context. For decades, African infrastructure was designed primarily for prestige or foreign interests, not for local economic empowerment. Traoré's decision to rethink such infrastructure challenges this colonial legacy, making it clear that the measure of a project should be its ability to transform lives, not just impress outsiders. The success of the stadium-turned-market could mark the beginning of a broader movement across Africa to repurpose underutilized structures for the direct benefit of citizens. The lesson here is profound. Development can be redefined, reclaimed, and reimagined in ways that are both practical and inspiring. By turning a stadium into 20,000 jobs, Ibrahim Traoré did more than create employment. He sparked a conversation about what leadership means in a time of crisis and opportunity, about how vision can transform concrete into community, and about how the future of Africa might lie not in waiting for others to provide solutions, but in rethinking what is already in hand. The stadium may have once echoed with the cheers of football fans, but today it resonates with the voices of workers, traders, and students who embody the hope of a nation determined to build its future from the ground up.